January 1952. The streets of Managua were quiet when Wally Byam eased his Airstream through the gate, engine rattling, aluminum dented from 3,000 miles of road. Of the 63 trailers that had left El Paso, only 14 remained. The road had eaten the others. Broken axles, mountain grades too steep to hold, river crossings that arrived without warning. Some turned back in Mexico. A few had been abandoned by the jungle edge and left to rust. Wally's trailer was a 1951 Airstream Flying Cloud, 21 feet of riveted aluminum numbered 1 before departure. The body still caught what little morning light there was, polished and dented in equal measure. He had towed it nearly 4,000 miles. That number meant he had led 63 trailers into Mexico and stayed until there were only 14. To understand how they got to 14, we have to go back to November 1951 and the lot in El Paso, Texas, November 1951. The El Rancho Grande trailer park filled slowly, then all at once. Travel trailers from across America, every make and size, parked in rows and waiting for a man named Wally Byam. Wally Byam was 55 years old, sharp-eyed, with a tan you earn on the road and not at a resort. He had founded Airstream in 1931 and nearly lost it 3 times since. This caravan was a gamble, for adventure, for publicity, for survival. He had advertised the trip in the Los Angeles Times expecting 35 trailers. The deposits came in faster than he could count. By summer, 63 units were confirmed, and Wally had to figure out how to keep them all alive. Each participant paid $250 into the common fund. Wally used it to buy generators, an Army surplus water purifier, spare parts, and a tow truck for the breakdowns he knew were coming. The group was not what anyone expected. Among the 63 trailers were a Marine Corps general, a physician, several millionaires, an 84-year-old retiree, and Wally's 12-year-old cousin Dale, who would one day ride about every mile of this journey. Wally painted a white number on each trailer before departure. His own Airstream got number 1. He issued blue berets to every caravanner so they could spot each other in any crowd, any country, any roadside emergency. They rolled out on December 1st, 1951, a train of aluminum and chrome spreading back through the El Paso morning. Journalists lined the road to photograph them. The Korean War was still burning somewhere beyond the horizon they were choosing to face. New Mexico swallowed the convoy quickly. The highway south narrowed, 2 lanes to one to pack dirt rising in pale clouds behind every trailer. By nightfall of the second day, the first tow vehicle had snapped a spring. If you want to see where Wally and the Airstream Flying Cloud end up from here, here's what I ask. See that subscribe button? It's our exchange, your way of saying this story reached you. Hit subscribe if it did, or drop a like if it moved you, and tell us in the comments what this road means to you. It helps us keep telling stories like this. Back to Wally and the Flying Cloud. The tow truck earned its place quickly. By Monterey, several trailers had already been repaired on the roadside and 2 had turned back. Overheated engines, twisted frames, the relentless corrugation of unpaved dirt highways. South of Oaxaca, the Pan American Highway simply ended, jungle and mountain where the road crews had not yet reached. There was no path through for a trailer. The caravan would have to go by rail. They backed the trailers onto flat rail cars and chained them down as the Mexican jungle closed around the track. Some caravanners had not believed this moment would come. The engine lurched, and they understood. The flat car train ran 15 hours through darkness and jungle. Creaking on old rails above flooded riverbanks the highway crews had never touched. Nobody slept. They sat in their trailers listening to the forest and the iron wheels. They had spent Christmas in Mexico City. Fiesta lights above the Zocalo, music in every street, the caravanners in their blue berets standing in the plaza like veterans of something not yet finished. Guatemala received them with mountain roads that switchbacked at angles no American highway engineer would have approved. The aluminum bodies held the equatorial heat. Tires softened on hot asphalt, then cracked on gravel where the asphalt stopped. In Guatemala City, the mayor treated the group to a formal dinner. They continued to Chichicastenango, where the Quiche Mayan tribe came in traditional dress to demonstrate their crafts to the strangers in the silver trailers. But the caravan was shorter now. Every country added casualties. Cracked frames, tow vehicles that quit on the grades, owners who finally read the road ahead and chose a different one. El Salvador met them with tourist guides at the border pointing toward the best roads and the nearest mechanics. It was passable. Even brief, the caravanners rested where they could and tightened their wheel bearings for what lay ahead. Honduras required visas that took days to process, and the caravan idled at the border in the heat while documents traveled through distant offices. A few trailers turned back here and did not return. The Nicaragua border was a different matter altogether. One of the caravanners, a man named Andy Anderson, drove ahead to scout the road into the country, bringing a translator along for a reason that quickly became clear. Anderson's car buried itself on the first hill past the border with no traction and jungle on every side. A farmer plowing nearby unhitched his oxen and pulled the vehicle free. No translator needed to understand the situation. Nicaragua was steep, humid, and largely without roads as Americans understood the word. The convoy moved in low gear through coffee plantations and across wooden plank bridges built by local villagers who had improvised their own engineering over generations. Near Managua, the president of Nicaragua met the caravan and led the group on a tour of his sugarcane plantation. 14 dusty, battered trailers had arrived here from Texas. A head of state was waiting to receive them. The Nicaraguan government had prepared a campsite on the outskirts of Managua with room for every trailer that had survived. They stayed a week. It was the first time in months they had not broken camp before dawn. Wally walked the line of 14 trailers that evening and ran a hand along the aluminum of his Flying Cloud. It was scratched, dusty, buckled slightly at the rear. It was whole. The 49 that didn't make it fell out at every stage after the Mexican rail crossing on the Guatemalan switchbacks in the Honduran heat. Some turned back. A few were simply abandoned by the roadside. In the days before departure, the 14 surviving caravanners visited coffee fincas in the hills above Managua and toured the lowland sugar plantations. The Nicaraguan people brought out food, music, and a warmth that none of the travelers would forget. Wally had lost weight and gained, in his own words, a new outcropping of gray hair. He had led the first trailer caravan to Managua. He told everyone who asked that he would never do it again. On February 1st, the Nicaraguans lined the road out of Managua, waving as the trailers turned north. Each driver now knew the road in both directions. That knowledge didn't make it gentler. Honduras gave them the same visa delays going north that it had given them going south. El Salvador was brief. They crossed back into Guatemala with trailers scratched and road-dusted to the wheel arches. Southern Mexico meant the flat cars again. Trailers chained to rail cars, the 15-hour jungle run through the gap the highway workers had still not finished. A tree had fallen across the track since December. They cleared it by hand. Something had changed going north. The Mexican Road Department had graded several of the worst sections smooth since December. The corrugated surface that had cost them hours of repairs going south was gone, and the trailers ran quieter for it. They crossed into El Paso in March 1952, 3 months after leaving, 14 trailers from the original 63. The lot at El Rancho Grande was waiting for them in the pale winter light. Nobody made a speech. Wally had lost weight and gained, in his own words, a new outcropping of gray hair. He was 55 years old and had just completed the first trailer caravan to Managua. He told reporters he would never do it again. The vow lasted a year. Letters arrived at the Airstream factory asking when the next caravan would leave. The road had done that, not just to the survivors, but to everyone who had read about them. The white numbers painted on trailers in El Paso became a tradition. Caravanners who finished wore theirs with a kind of rank. When Wally later formalized the club, the numbers turned red, and they are still on Airstreams today. In August 1955, the Wally Byam Caravan Club was officially founded in Nova Scotia. 4 years after El Paso, the accident became an institution. The road from Texas to Nicaragua had started all of it. The 1951 Airstream Flying Cloud No. 1 was not built for what it crossed. It had been designed for American roads, without four-wheel drive in an era before utility vehicles existed. It survived anyway. Those roads required more than mechanical durability. They required willingness to load your home onto a rail car in the jungle dark, to ask a farmer's oxen for rescue, to continue when turning back made better sense. The 49 who turned back were not failures. They had driven further into the world than almost anyone they knew, i.e. the road simply asked more than some of them had left to give. Wally's 12-year-old cousin Dale returned 4 months late for school. The officials wanted to hold him back until Wally explained what the boy had seen: capital cities, Mayan ruins, jungle rail crossings, a head of state. The caravan proved a travel trailer could go where it was never intended to go. It proved strangers could become a community through shared difficulty. And it proved the road rewards a particular kind of stubbornness. The Flying Cloud had been dented, pulled through mud, hauled on flat cars through the dark. Wally had it repaired eventually. For a time after El Paso, he left the marks and called them the record. In the years that followed, Wally led caravans to Europe, Cuba, and across Africa from Cape Town to Cairo. But each one began the same way: numbers painted, berets issued, horizon chosen. The Nicaragua caravan had shown him the template. The 1951 Airstream Flying Cloud that wore number 1 crossed roads it was never meant to see survived a journey that claimed 49 others and left behind a tradition still moving on the road today. The red numbers are its signature. If this story stayed with you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us keep finding these roads and telling the stories left on them. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from.